Welcome back. We're glad you're watching the Morning Express. And I want to focus now on the release of those results of the 2016 KCSE examinations. And here with us to talk about the intrigues of the 2016 KCSE results is education expert Jonathan Wesaya. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you, Michelle.
Right. Now, Jonathan, you were with us since these results were released.
Yes.
And, you know, for the past 24 hours, the talk has been 141 A's. How could that happen? We've gotten used to registering 2,000 A's, 3,000 A's, but we were speaking earlier, and you say we're focusing too much on the number of A's. What about the number of E's, which are a lot more? Talk to us about your thoughts on that.
You know, the original design of any education system is to produce learners who are functional and useful in the communities where they operate. Now, we have a situation in Kenya where today, after having children in the education system for 12 years, 33,399 have scored E. That is slightly more than 6 times the E's we had in 2015.
Right.
Because in 2015, we had 5,350. What are we going to do with these children? Because they are not literally eligible for anything.
Right.
Who has facilitated this? Is it that 33,000 young Kenyans are incapable of doing anything, or did we test them for that which is not useful for their life? That is the question.
Many times people say when you take a fish out of water and ask it to climb a tree, it's definitely going to fail. Right, but let's talk also about, we had 577,000 candidates about thereof, and out of that, about 480,000 still did not make the cutoff points for university. What do we do with that number?
The system is warped. It is bent in a way that needs to be corrected.
Right.
Because the growth of the parallel system for post-secondary education has not been gradual. What happened was that in the late 1990s, with the advent of the parallel degree program in public universities, many universities pushed to create spaces for people who would not have qualified through the Joint Admission Board to come and join. But for that to happen, it meant that universities compromised on quality, and many people got into universities because they could pay. Now, that watered down the essence and the decency of hard work. The son of a peasant farmer or a herder in Mandera who struggles and literally invests their blood to qualify to join university is put in the same class with somebody who literally was on holiday because they knew they were going to cheat their way around.
Right.
But if you look at the results for 2016, what it tells you is that all the children who scored between A and C+ are likely going to be absorbed up to 90% within the education system without having to create a parallel system. In Kenya, the middle class and the emerging middle class are very complacent. That if you go into a school and it's not working for your kid, you establish a parallel system by paying for a private school for your kid. You go into a public hospital, it is not working, you go and pay in a private hospital. So that parallel nature means that the average Kenyan is taxed twice. Because you pay your taxes, you don't receive the services, but then take your disposable income to pay for that which the government is not providing. This is the beginning of holding people to account. You are paid a salary, Michelle. You are a teacher. You are supposed to deliver instruction, but it should not just be instruction. It must be quality instruction. So we need to start asking questions to the teachers and the managers of these education institutions. What have you been doing that we have nearly 500,000 learners who've spent 12 years with you and we cannot place them anywhere?
Right. And I'd like to come back to that, but let's touch a little bit on the number of A's once again, because previously we've recorded, the disparity between this year and previous years is a lot. What does this say for our education system, the 844 system? Are we in a system that is just training children or students to get that A? It's about getting the A, not really what value you're leaving the school with.
Yep, and I don't want to blame the system. I want to blame the implementers of the system. I am a very proud product of the 844 system.
Right.
And I don't think I'm half-baked.
As many corporates would say today.
Yes. So what is happening is that the premium to score an A is actually not in school. The premium placed on scoring an A is at the household. Kenyans over time have realized that education is the single most determinant for social transformation and economic empowerment. So every mother, every father will desire their child to be on the top of their class because it changes the economic fortunes. Now, that pressure, you will notice if you get into any parents' meeting in any primary school, at the very lowest entry level, the parents will always be congratulating the teachers if their 3-4-year-old is able to read the newspaper headline, they're able to speak a little English. But nobody talks about the social skills that these children will have acquired. Because, Michelle, if you have one kid and maybe you're only 3 adults in the house, that kid is socializing with adults. When they get into the school setting, they learn how to utilize space, share and cooperate with their age mates. That is a skill for life.
Right.
Nobody appreciates the role the teachers do in the lives of their children by helping them to collaborate, to think critically, to communicate effectively, and then to belong socially. Now, when we move from that level, at the end of the spectrum, in terms of the cycle, we have courses that we call prestigious, and you know, those, the engineering courses and medicine. So everybody wants to join. So what people are doing outside the education system, we've actually been financing cartels who steal these exams and make them available to our children during the examination window. So what I want to commend the policy makers led by the cabinet secretary at this point is what is done is just narrowed the playing space because there was too much time. You remember, during my time, we would ordinarily begin exams in September and end the exams towards the end of November. So it means that people have 2-3 months to play around. But what the cabinet secretary did was create an examination window, 1 month. Set targets, as the chair of the examination council said, and apply yourself to the targets and make sure it works. If you don't make it work, you are held to account. That's the difference.
Right. And you know, I understand, I mean, it's interesting that you say you don't consider yourself half-baked, despite being a product of 844, which I am myself. But what now happens to the thousands and thousands of candidates who've scored A's that could not be accounted for? They've already graduated, they've already been through university, they're in the workforce now.
Yeah, what I do as an individual, and I ask many other people who find themselves in positions of influence at the workplace, is reach out to the young people who are getting from school into the workspaces. Mentor them, make it deliberate. Sit down with them and help them apply their energies to the work at hand. One of the things that the so-called millennials have is energy. They have so much energy and they are reactive, they are fast. But you need to put them into a channel that energy is applied positively. They can give you very good results. But it just means that in the last 5 or so years, we lost the plot a little. So there are quite a number of them out there that will need very direct support and mentoring from us.
Right. So are we looking at a paradigm shift now in the education sector? Because we've seen that the bigwigs, the giants who you normally score or, you know, take the first top 10, 20 positions, this time could not even produce a single A. You know, the likes of Maseno School. So are we likely to see a shift in the education sector in terms of where parents choose to take their children, where children choose to go?
There is going to be a shift, but even before we talk about the shift, the question that the education sector needs to be asking, what are we going to do to the head teachers who've been leading these schools, who are producing 200 A's every year, and they cannot get one A this time? You know, if look at Maseno School, look at Maranda, look at Chavakali, look at Moi Girls, look at Kamusinga. Where are they in this arrangement?
Right.
It means that somebody was facilitating some undercurrent over the years. So are we going to hold those head teachers to account? Are we going to hold the invigilators who are supervising the exam in those schools over that period? But that is now retributive. Is the education sector even able to manage that type of punishment if we were to be meted out? But going forward for 2017, there's going to be a shift.
Right.
The shift is in the changes that are happening at the curriculum level. What we are likely going to see in the next 2 to 3 years is that people are going to be assessed beyond the classroom.
Okay.
So it will be on your talent, on your social skills, and creating a pathway for an area where you think you can apply yourself best. Number 2, I foresee the cabinet secretary reaching out to the people in the sector who are in charge of quality control.
Right.
The Commission for Higher Education is going to be an area of focus for players in the sector because they have been the ones approving what is happening at the universities. They are the ones who are admitting many of these people who scored these fake A's.
Right.
So what have they been doing? But interestingly, you will notice that every year when we are graduating, and I was surprised that the Technical University of Kenya was taken to court by some students in the engineering department who were saying that they were barred from graduating and they were notified less than a week before they graduated that they cannot graduate because the engineering board thought that there's something they had not taken. So how do you keep me in school for 5 years? Then when my peers are graduating, you are telling me that I have a unit that I'll take up next year. Who will pay for the lost opportunity? When my peers get into the job market and start earning, who will pay that which I am missing? It is not my mistake. So we are going to see more people question the Commission for Higher Education. But the biggest thing that happened, and it's likely going to be lost in the celebration and the glory that comes with the results, is the meeting that the Cabinet Secretary had with the President before he released the results. And the request by the President that we have what we are likely going to call the unique identifier for every child as they join the system instead of the index number. What this will do, it will give us 3 things. 1, we will know Michelle Ngele at baby class and we will know the Michelle Ngele at PhD because you are the same.
Right.
Number 2, the system is now able to calculate how much money does the sector need to keep a child in Kenya in school throughout the process. Because as it is now, it is wishy-washy because the private sector plays a role, the public sector, and nobody has the figures. But number 3 is that the resources that are given from Treasury to the education sector can now be traced. Because what is happening now, if you are in Nairobi and you transferred to Mombasa, the returns for capitation grant to, let's say, Nairobi Primary were made this year. So the allocation that Nairobi Primary will receive in January are dependent on the numbers that were given by the head teacher by September. But the same child in Nairobi Primary, whose resources are going to be sent to Nairobi Primary, has already transferred into Mombasa. So the teacher in Mombasa who admitted this kid will not have that money. So some of these things are able to get eliminated with this unique identifier and a functional education management information system so that you are able, it's real time and you are able to trace these resources. And that will give us value for money.
That's a lot of technology that we're employing. And Education CS Fred Matiang'i did mention that technology has also made it possible to curb exam cheating like the way it did. But talk to us about, being an education expert, the progress of the proposed 2663 system.
Yeah, that progress. But before we get to the progress, you will notice that the Cabinet Secretary for Education chose to work with the Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government and ICT. If you remember, the immediate former chair of the Kenya National Examination Council while they were releasing the 2015 results and 2014, always identified ICT as a challenge. And they will say, you know, because of mobile phones and the internet, people are stealing exams. Matiang'i and team have chosen to look at the same thing from a different perspective.
Right.
They have looked at technology as an enabler. So it is the platform upon which the reform is now centered. Now, as we move towards the new system that is likely to come in, I don't want us to concentrate on the number of years that children are going to be in school, the change of name, but I want every Kenyan to apply their mind to the content that is going to be within this system,
right,
because that is what our children then become. We are lauding Matiang'i today because he accepted there was a problem in the sector and he is acting on it. And it's a function of integrity, knowing where you stand. The results we are posting today, Michelle, are a pale shadow of what we posted last year. But why are we lauding Matiang'i? We are lauding him because he is simply doing his work. That is what the cabinet secretary is supposed to do,
right,
give direction. So let Kenyans not resign to mediocrity and applaud anything that is supposed to be ordinary. But I'm happy because we had hit rock bottom.
Right.
Now we are coming out. So there is the proposal that the number of, the age of the children who are going to get into school, likely it must be 6 years before you get into standard 1. So the school is not going to babysit for parents.
Right.
You need to take your children in school when they can learn. Number 2 is that we are looking at multiple pathways that if you are not mathematics person, if you are not a physics person, nobody is going to tie a ball down your leg and make you walk with it through the system.
Right.
There will be alternative pathways. But the biggest thing is the recognition of talent outside the classroom. So those people who can engage in public speaking, those who can play football, those who can sing, the system is going to make provision for you so that as you proceed, your counterpart will be looking at civil aviation, but you will be looking at your sports science because you are a sports person. You will be looking at your writing instead of struggling with biology and chemistry, and you want to end up in the creative sector. Yes.
Wow, and that's quite a good change for the country in terms of education reforms. And before we move on, let's talk about, this was quite an interesting development that out of the top 20 candidates, 16 of them were girls. This is something that's never really been recorded before. What are your thoughts on the same?
Yes, and for me, I don't find it surprising at all because since the 90s and the advent of the women empowerment processes in this country and globally, there has been a very consistent investment in the education for the girl child.
Right.
Now, that was happening because the girl child was left behind. But now, 2 decades later, the girl child is just catching up.
Right.
If you look at the results, literally 47% of the candidature were girls and 53% were boys.
Right.
So we are moving closer to what we call gender parity in education terms. But as that is happening, there has been what I'll call total neglect for mentoring and support for the boy child. We are seeing a situation where the boys are now beginning to drop out of school consistently when they get to the mid-level primary school and early secondary school. So standard 5 and 6 and form 2 and 3 are critical transition points for the boy. So it means for 2017 in terms of priorities for investment at the household level and at the national level in government, we need to look out for the boy child. But this is what I tell the men who are out there. Reach out to your sons, reach out to your brothers and cousins, and just hold their hand through the system. Because the ladies are doing it. but men are a little complacent.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. And I'm pretty sure they'll catch feelings with that. But let's talk about the ranking of schools. You know, those are bills that it should be reintroduced, but we did not see it with KCPE exams. We did not see it with KCSE exams as well. Why is that?
Towards the end of this year, Parliament passed a law that ranking needs to be reintroduced, so it's actually law. The argument by the Cabinet Secretary is that the law came in too late when the examination processes and structures had already been established,
right.
So they will consider it in future. But then it's a typical Kenyan thing because we are reactive. Most of the politicians and the private players in the private sector who have the money are the ones pushing the government to introduce ranking. It is not government priority, right. I can tell you that for free. But what is happening, we are moving from ranking because of the negative effect it has on other learners who are not going to be ranked top. The Kenya Institute for Curriculum Development is putting in place the change in the sector, and we are talking about other non-quantitative features of learners. You know, talent, your personality, how you present yourself, your cleanliness. So how are we going to rank that?
Right.
That Michelle today had her blouse ironed out nicely,
right.
and that earns you a mark. So it is a typical Kenyan situation where the left hand does not talk to the right hand properly. But what I believe in is that the engagement strategy that the Cabinet Secretary is putting in place, that is something that can be rationalized. I want to believe this is not a law that is cast in stone.
Right.
It can be changed to fit the demands of the sector.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do a bit of speculation as we wind up this interview. Next year, a lot of radical changes are still going to be made in the education sector. Are we expecting less? And I know we shouldn't focus on the heirs, but are we expecting less than the number we've seen this year?
I mentioned this, and the idea is under normal circumstances, there is what we call the normal distribution in statistics. That on the left, you'll have what maybe your high achievers. On the extreme right, you will have people who are slightly below average. They need to mirror each other. This year, we've noticed that we have 0.02% S, and we have a very high concentration of people who are scoring E who are below average. That is an indictment of the system. It means the system is wasteful. So we need to ask ourselves, what else do we need to do to change that? Number two is that teachers are going to be held to account. The issue of performance contracting is likely going to rear its head. The unions don't like it, but then it's now a fact of life in modern management because reward is going to be pegged on performance.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, and so, you know, this is some very interesting developments that we're taking a look at in the education sector. And, you know, just relating this, say, to being an education researcher, how would you relate this to some of the most developed education systems in the world?
For a very long time, Kenya has prided itself as the peak of development and, you know, the pinnacle of the quality education system. But the problem has been, who are we comparing ourselves with? We are comparing ourselves, unfortunately, with Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, who are not supposed to be our peers. We need to reach out there and set new standards so that we belong. If you look at the university rankings that happen every year, you will notice South Africa takes the top 3-4 spots, always. Right. Where are our universities? In top 100, we usually just have Jomo Kenyatta and Moi University, Nairobi, appearing interchangeably. Every year, you only get one. So we need now to talk quality from the early childhood development centers to the universities. The rot in the university education where people have their master's thesis written for them by other people. Recently on social media, I had a friend of mine who's a pioneer in devolution in Kenya, studied in South Africa. He did the very first sterling PhD work on devolution. Somebody just reproduced it, went to another university in South Africa and was awarded a degree.
Wow.
So we have a lot in terms of just correcting the mess that's in the sector.
All right, Jonathan, thank you so much for speaking to us on the intrigues of the 2016 KCSE results. Jonathan Wesaya is an education expert. And we take a short break now here on Morning Express. Don't go too far. We have so much more on the other side.